Good afternoon. Oh, it's working. Great, I'll turn it on. So this is going to be different from the presentations you've heard so far. So I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to tell you about the great things we do. I'm just going to offer an argument. So amid all the cheering that has been going on today, I thought I'd like to take a hard look. Oh, I need the mic, don't I? I'd like to take a hard look at civic-tech, the progress we're making or the progress we're not making, analyze some of the contradictions within the civic-tech space, and then offer an alternative way to maybe get things to move a little bit faster. So this is an argument, not a sales pitch, although it's a bit of a sales pitch. Before I start, I should share the perspective that I'm speaking to you from today. So, and the reason I'm doing this is because I think it's always important to understand where somebody's coming from. So it says on my thing here today that I'm coming from Delib. I don't want them to be responsible at all for what I'm going to say. I'm chair of Delib, but I'm actually an advisor to another organization, actually here in the room today, Partisan, and I've done a few other things here in politics and in civic and online crowdfunding. So I wanted you to know that, A, you shouldn't blame Delib for everything I'm going to say. It's an excellent company, leading company providing SaaS software for civic engagement in the UK, but I'm not selling. But what I'm doing is presenting kind of the view of a citizen, putting forward an argument for advancing civic tech. The other thing I should say is that despite the way I sound, I'm not American, or I am American, but I was born there, but I've been here for 38, not here, I've been in the UK for 38 years, and that's really my perspective. So what am I trying to accomplish today? I'm very keen to adjust the way we govern ourselves. Things are a complete mess. I don't have to share that with any of you. We had a lot of that in the previous discussion earlier today. And I actually feel things are much worse than kind of we think they are for lots and lots of reasons, which I won't bore you with. But I believe that democratic innovation, often assisted by civic technology, can make a positive difference. What I want to do is put forward the argument that our current approach, though full of virtue and academic merit, hasn't yielded satisfactory results so far. And I want to use a case study that I'm very familiar with, which is the impact investing area, to argue with you as to how a different approach worked there and it could be applied to civic technology. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to try to be a bit controversial. Sometimes I may even overstate things I believe just to make a point, and you're welcome to challenge me. So what are the problems or contradictions of civic technology? And I think we as an industry have to address them, otherwise we're just not going to get anywhere. We're going to get nowhere slowly, as I said on the introductory slide. So the first thing is that citizens are just not that interested. They're bored with this. I was speaking to somebody earlier today. I don't see if he's in the room now, but I said, a really good exercise. You know, what sort of turnout do you get? He said, 1%. If we're really lucky, we get 2. Maybe we get 3. If we spend millions on marketing, maybe we can get 4% of the relevant population. I mean, that's terrible. That's not citizen engagement. That's a show of citizen engagement. And people are busy. They have other things to do. They have no faith in democracy or in their political leaders. They think their leaders are corrupt. At best, they're just incompetent. And I think people are really turned off the whole system and process. Secondly, politicians are turkeys, and turkeys do not vote for Christmas. The people who decide whether the rules change are the people who are prospering by the rules as they are. Well, why would they change the rules? They're turkeys who will not vote for Christmas. Third thing is that these things cost money. And we hear constantly how there's no money available. And now we've got to spend a lot more on defense because the Russians are going to take us over. We maybe don't have the money for these sorts of exercises, especially as the people voting for this money to go this way are the politicians who are the turkeys who don't want to vote for Christmas. Fourth, even when there's lots of work and serious effort undertaken, very little changes. Sometimes the citizen engagement exercises are just advisory. people have no power, they get ignored, or as in British Columbia, you set up really difficult hurdles so that even when they win, things don't change. There are some cases where things do change as a result, but I think I think there's a lot of effort that's been undertaken for very little result thus far. And this is something, this may be one of the more controversial things I'm going to say. People who claim to believe in democracy kind of really don't. I mean, ask yourselves this question. If you're from the left, are you really going to ask people what they think of capital punishment? You don't want to hear the answer. What if they say yes? If you're on the right, do you really want to ask people about what they feel about climate change? No, because they're going to tell you they really care about it, and that's not what you want to hear. And I have worked with some really fine people who are really concerned about citizen engagement. And when I say, how committed to democracy are you? And I give them these examples, they start to, twist uncomfortably in their seat because they're actually selectively committed to democracy. They look at some of the votes recently in Europe and they say, well, that's not democratic. Kind of it is, actually. 30% of people are voting for the far right. I don't know if you believe in democracy or not, but this is part of the game. Sometimes you lose. And the approach that we've taken to advocate for civic technology is equivalent to lecturing people to do this because it's the right thing to do. You kind of wave your finger at people and you have the reaction that this woman is going to like, why is this person talking to me this way? I think people do react that way. I think that when you wag your finger and with complete self-confidence say, you should do this because it's the right thing to do, you're going to get the reaction that that woman, I think, displays. And as a result of all of this, I think things are moving at a really glacial pace. And that's really worrying to me. So summarizing what I've said till now, participation is really limited. Many processes are only advisory. Politicians are really reluctant to have their hands tied. But the lack of a binding commitment to act is really demotivating to citizens. Citizens feel that even at the end of these exercises, nothing changes, even if things are really clear. Progress is very limited at the national level, and where there has been progress, it's typically the local authority level, where for some reason a mayor gets really committed. By the way, I hear there's a very terrific mayor here in Mechelen. That's what I heard today from a colleague. Just throw that out. And notable, well-known, and highly publicized cases are too few. And I think that's quite important. So when you talk to people about civic tech or citizen engagement, they say, give me an example. And they want an example that they have heard about. And that we really don't have that many, apart from, I think, the Irish case. I mentioned the British Columbia thing. Macron's grand conversation with the French people was ridiculous and a very cynical thing. We've seen the things he's gone on to do. Now, I'm going to suggest an approach that might work, or that I think might work, but I'm going to reason by metaphor. I can't tell you this will work in this field, but I can tell you that it worked in the impact investment field, which is a field that I inhabited for actually about 20 years, from 1999 on. In the early days of social entrepreneurship, there were many worthy articles written about the subject. Sound familiar? And people who were advocates of this field, by the way, impact investing or social investing, what is that? It's just kind of investing in entrepreneurship, but where the ultimate objective isn't just making a lot of money. It's where the ultimate objective is making money and making a positive impact on society, environmentally, socially, ethically, etc. So that's what I was doing for 20 years of my life. It was very easy, as somebody in that sector, to set up a meeting with important people. They would say, oh yes, do come in. And then you'd talk to them. You'd spend an amazing amount of time just trying to explain this concept because you couldn't make it tangible for them. And then they'd say, oh, that's really interesting. We'll get back to you. And of course, they never did. But they took the meeting because we were talking about something good and they wanted to be perceived to be thinking about doing something good. there were hardly any success stories. And again, I think success stories are really important, and almost no engagement by institutional investors. And if you're going to do investment and you don't have institutional investors on your side, you will get nowhere fast or slowly. However, impact investment came along, so they changed the name. Actually, the Americans changed the name. I say as an American, the Americans changed the name because Americans get really queasy about the word social. So they insisted that this gets called impact investment instead of social investment. So there's still many worthy articles about the topic. But mainstream investors started to get engaged, and they set up quite a few impact funds. And those funds developed investment track records, and those track records got established and enabled people to say, actually, maybe this will work. Maybe this is something real. And there were a large and growing number of success stories. Think of Ben & Jerry's, or The Body Shop, or for those of you from the UK, Just Giving. I mean, these were all impactful businesses that were looking to the double bottom line, doing good and doing well at the same time. And I think the UN Sustainability Development Goals also had an important impact. By the way, for those of you who are taking photos of the slides, I'm really happy to send them afterwards. Just hit me on LinkedIn. And there was enormous growth over the past decade. So Better Society Capital, which used to be called Big Society Capital, says that impact investing has grown by 12 times to 10 billion in the UK. And the Impact Investing Institute, which has looser a definition, says there's now 77 billion in the UK. The Global Impact Investment Network, which is, as the name implies, a global organization, they say that it's now 1.6 trillion, which is about 1% of all globally managed assets. That's enormous. And more importantly, that area is now growing at 21% compound, which is 3 times the rate of financial assets generally. And European institutions manage over half, with about a third coming from the United States. What arguments brought in these investors? And this is really key. We said to them, you can make more money on these products. You can charge more. Oh, that's interesting. Secondly, those funds that come along, they'll be much stickier. People won't just put in their money and go to the next product. They will stay there because they have a moral commitment. By the way, your staff, who you pay a lot of money to, they really like this stuff, as do some of your customers. And it was particularly popular with next-gen, people who inherit lots of money, feel guilty, and want to do this sort of thing. There were some well-publicized success stories, some of which I mentioned, a lot of others, and people became conscious of the evidence that you could have impact for free. In other words, you could have your cake and eat it. You could invest for impact and actually have market rate returns. So the question is this relevant? Could this be relevant in the civic tech space? And I contend that it could be. So I did some work. I have to confess it was as a master's student, and this is from my dissertation, where I interviewed 70 civic tech companies in Europe and people on the government side doing civic tech. And I asked them, what motivations are there that politicians would react favorably to that would get them to purchase civic tech products? And because I wanted it to be cute, I had it all beginning with C. Obviously, that was forced. But there are some really tangible reasons why political professionals will engage with civic tech, and I'm going to go through them in detail. 1, cost reduction. You want to do something, especially in Britain, but I'm sure this is true elsewhere, and you'll get sued and challenged, and people will protest. But if you engage with them in advance, you don't have to engender all those costs. You can save a lot of money. That's a very powerful reason to engage in civic tech, first thing. Secondly, compliance. Very easy. Government says you have to do something. It's obligatory. You have to do it. Well, that's a good reason. I don't want to break the law. I'm not Donald Trump. I'll do that. Third, it creates can create a continuous channel. That's a triple C. A continuous channel of communication with the citizenry. fourth C, which is what you want to do as a politician. So you start with a bit of civic engagement, and you can carry on. I mean, what politician doesn't want to have a continuous channel of communication with citizens? That leads to, next C, campaign success. Politicians do care about campaign success. It's also very useful, and this was particularly the case in Ireland, in clearing a political logjam. You want to take on abortion in Ireland? Better to ask people and do it through citizens' assemblies leading to a referendum, because that's a hot-button issue in a Catholic country like Ireland. And finally, changing consumer behavior. So consumers are accustomed to being treated this way, and it's only in the political realm they're not asked, how did you like that product? Did you get a delivery? Da-da-da. Those sorts of questions. They want to be and are expecting to be treated that way, and I think political professionals need to do that as well. So my contention is that these are tangible factors that will appeal to politicians and political professionals who serve them and get them to buy this stuff, and that will work a lot better than waving your finger at them, not to say that you do this, and telling them that this is something they ought to do. So, in conclusion, I think the way we're going about it isn't working. There's lots of evidence that it isn't working. There are lots of contradictions in the sector, which we're kind of ignoring and not dealing with. And I think the way that it was approached in the impact investment industry could help inform what we could do to accelerate the adoption of civic technology globally. Thank you.